All right. Oh, it's good to be back in front of a microphone here. This is good stuff. My name is Chris Shatek, and I am here with my amazing team members, Lauren Howman, Matt Gardner. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Lauren.
Good. Can't complain. Can't
Yeah.
complain.
Yeah,
Excited to
good to
be
see you.
here.
So we decided we like to talk. We all like to talk, and so we figured why not do a podcast? Because there's just not enough of them out there these days, right?
Right,
So
right.
let's let's throw ours into the mix. And we are going to be, talking about all sorts of things, about living an alcohol-free life, how we quit, where we used to be, where we're at, how we, help people stop drinking, get over alcohol, and have a wonderful life. And so we're just kind of gonna do these on a regular basis, and you let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll do it. So we figured a good way to kind of kick this off is to talk about a topic that we often hear. And personally, I felt this way too before I quit drinking, and that is FOMO, fear of missing out, or, just in general, like my life is going to be so different without alcohol. Because I think that is what keeps a lot of people from making the decision to be a non-drinker. It is the fear of, well, my life is going to look so different. Is it going to be boring? What am I going to do on the weekends? When I come home from a long day at work and I'm stressed, I got anxiety. What am I going to do if I don't have alcohol in my life? And so let's just talk about that, because from my perspective, I understand that completely. Like I said, I used to have that same fear, right? I don't know. Did you guys feel that way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's terrifying.
Definitely. Definitely. I think the life in general, like it's often like for me, it's always been like the devil, right? So especially when it came to this, like my life was so centric around alcohol. So there was a very big worry and like, who even am I without this? So yeah, absolutely. That was a big fear of mine.
Yeah. I mean, it really does become part of our identities. If we've been drinking for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, however long we've been drinking, most of our life begins to revolve around it. And so it's, imagining taking that away, you're taking a big part of your identity away. And so it's very understandable how people are fearful of that. But, I will just tell you from personal experience that it's really it's the programming in our heads that is keeping us stuck in that, oh my God, life's going to be so different and boring and not fun without alcohol, right?
Right.
And so we build it up way worse than it actually is, because yeah, my life changed since I quit drinking. Of course it's going to change. It's not going to be the same. But it's changed for the better in almost every aspect. I mean, I say almost, it's probably every aspect now that I think about it. I can't think of anything that's not better because
Yeah.
I quit drinking. It is different. My friends are a little bit different. We do
Mhm.
different things when we're together. Um, but things have changed. But again, they've changed for the better. And so um, just that's the thought that I want to get into your head first and foremost. Like, don't be afraid of the change. Embrace it. Like, get excited about what the change could bring to your life. I mean, what have you guys noticed as far as since you quit drinking, and if you had the fear of like, oh, life's going to be different, like what have you noticed that's different about your life? Lauren, how about you?
Yeah, well, the one thing is if you're a person who's sober curious, or you're, here listening to this because you're curious about just like how it's done and how we did it in a way that felt really good. We're not missing out. There is no FOMO. Is yeah, life is going to change, but like that's why you're here, because alcohol has gotten to a place with you in your relationship with it that it's not working very well. So, you're not getting along well with people in your life. Your productivity is down. Your creativity has been squashed. You're in this little prison where you can't go anywhere, can't do anything because it all interrupts alcohol. And of course, there'll be tons of examples of that throughout this show or this podcast. Um, but you wanted life to change, but it is scary. Like, I did not want to continue my relationship with alcohol the way it was. But then, yeah, what's left? Because I had dumbed my life down so that everything could consider alcohol first. So where we were going to go, depending on where I could drink, events, just everything was, how can Lauren get the most bang for her buck, the most alcohol in, keep my buzz going, all of that. So I wanted all of that to change because that wasn't working well. So while it is scary to do something new and kind of dip your toes into the water, it's also like, hell yes, this is what we wanted to do. We're so sick of this other way. It's not working. It's not working. Or none of us would be on this call. But it is, I think the anticipation is much scarier than the actual doing of the quitting of drinking. That makes sense. What about you?
And well, and real quick, I just want to say too, it's like this fear of change. Nobody really likes change, right? We get so used to our ways and we're comfortable, and you know, it's an innate thing that we have. Like, oh, I don't want things to change, but we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to grow and evolve. And I don't know about you guys, but it just became, for me, when I was a drinker, it was the same thing every day, not growing, not changing, and it got to the point where I'm like, shit, I just can't keep doing this anymore. So bring on the growth, bring on the change. Like, I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how uncomfortable it is. Something needs to be different here.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What you said, the last sentence you said, Lauren, as far as like the anticipation, very much resonate with that. It's like, it's so often the case, isn't it? It's like this we build it up in our minds. I built it up in my mind. I'm like, oh man, how is this going to go? Right. And then it's one moment at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, one celebration at a time. You know, you get through your first sober Christmas, the first Thanksgiving. And, you know, granted, for me, like the one thing that really comes to mind for me was camping. I was so excited, but for me, it was like, by the time I was setting up my tent, I was a few beer in, you know what I mean? Usually. And I was trying to get through like a flat of beer on my first night sort of thing. And I remember just like getting through my first night of camping, just kind of like with sober, and just going, man, this is like much different. That it's kind of boring. So I perceived it at the time, right? So there's just like those moments where it's just like redefining it. And another thing I wanted to add too, part of the illusion or the justification system that I'd set up for myself was, you know, people are going to be disappointed in me, right? I had this, like, the fear of missing out was so tied in with the social aspect and the feeling of, oh man, everybody, like, I'm party Matt, like nobody's going to like me without the booze. So like, I got to keep this up, right? So there was this illusion that I had to keep up this persona, you know what I mean? Because I was worried about what people thought of me in that sense. So that was a huge part of me worried about the change as well, was the social aspect. And I know this is something that's been a recurring theme that the three of us, and everybody talks about in early sobriety. So that was a big part of it for me. I'm curious how that showed up for you guys. So we've kind of talked about like the individual growth. Yes, there was that yearning inside me, but there was still this like external fear that I was like, I put on myself that was really just more justifications for me to continue drinking, was like the worry of what other people thought of me as well. So curious what you guys think of that, you know, subject.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a self-proclaimed people pleaser. I always have been, and I didn't realize that, how much I was putting emphasis on pleasing others as opposed to worrying about myself. And yeah, we talked about it earlier. The identity that we build up is, I'm the guy who has a few drinks and then is goofy, and people know me as a drinker. Without it, well, who am I? Are they still going to like me? And we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we forget to focus on, well, yeah, but what are we doing for ourselves? How are we feeling on a daily basis? Like, is it worth it to feel miserable and not enjoy our life just to, you know, keep up this facade of like, hey, I'm the guy who drinks? And that just gets exhausting after a while. And one of the best things about quitting drinking, and this is one big thing that we help our clients with, is putting the emphasis back on you and remembering that you are the number one priority in your life, right? You need to take care of yourself. You need to get yourself in a good spot and not really give a shit about whether you're pleasing other people or not. Because the interesting thing is, once you get yourself in a good spot, the ripple effect that it will have on everybody in your life is pretty amazing. And I've seen it. We've seen it with the people that we've worked with. And yeah, but I think, you know, people we're not taught to like focus on ourselves like that. Part of us feels bad if we are focusing on ourselves.
Yeah, it's like selfish, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's that programming that's in there from, you know, growing up, that it's like, oh no, we can't just focus on ourselves. And it's all about fitting in too, right? Like I come back to that. It's like our brains are so hardwired from back in the day, because our brains are really still old, right? They haven't evolved that much from early times, when if you weren't part of the tribe, if you weren't part of the community, you were dead, right? If you weren't you were out on your own, you got killed by a wildebeest, I don't know, whatever it was. And
Yeah.
so this is ingrained naturally in our brains that we have to be a part of other people and what they're doing in society.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the struggle comes in too, right? It's like everywhere you look, alcohol, friends, family, everybody's doing it. I don't want to be on the outside. And whether that's a conscious choice or not, I think a lot of us, have that going on in the background.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all good points. I'm just curious, like, now that we're all three of us are, into different stages of our sobriety out of that initial time that we're kind of talking about. How does that show up for you guys now? Like, as far like, is there FOMO? Like, do you guys still get any? I mean, for me, I know like there's elements of it, like sort of a carryover from the pandemic. I feel a little bit rusty with some of my socializing skills because everything was kind of locked down. I'm still sort of thawing out from that. I do work from home otherwise. My previous job, I was out in public all the time, but I definitely find that there's a little bit of, again, like we were talking about, Lauren, with the anticipation of going out. I'm like, ooh, how is this going to go again? Because I'm a little bit rusty, and I would say that is sort of a combination of like the Arrested Development from all socializing meant drinking for me. So getting out of that. And then, that the 2 or 3 years of lockdown, I felt that I do have a different perspective on socializing now, 4 years into my sobriety than I did even in early sobriety, if that makes sense.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I want to say real quick before I go there is, the one thing you said is like you didn't want to let people down. And I'm sure you found this the way I found it. Everybody knew me as like the wino, and it was like a title that I was proud of. I don't know. But nobody else did care. And I did put that, it was a story I told myself that I would be letting people down if I wasn't the party girl. And if I wasn't drinking everybody under the table. And I found that absolutely wasn't true. And people liked me just as well. Now, if you're a person that goes out to the bar every night and that's the setting that you're in all the time, you may find that your friends are going to change, your settings are going to change. Because if all you have in common is somebody is getting shit-faced, then you're probably not going to have much to talk about. But I did find that nobody cared that I wasn't drinking, and I got a lot of like attaboys for it, like, damn, good job, girl, like that's awesome. And then I also got to hear, when people are like, you've lost some weight. So they're allowed to call you fat if you've lost the weight. Now, when you quit drinking, they will say, well, I'm actually really glad, I was worried about you. And you're like, dang, okay, thanks for telling me when it was happening, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have listened anyway. But I think it's a good point to just say that we have these stories like, oh, I'm going to let people down because I'm not drinking. Are you kidding me? They don't care. And they're going to continue to do what they want to do with their relationship with alcohol, despite what you do. And most of the time, we're not going to have friends peer pressuring us. And if we do, then we already know what to do with that. That's going to be step one, like they got to go. But honestly, for me, I didn't have a lot of friends like that. So I did okay with that transition. But now, as far as what you said there, Matt, about, rusty with your socialization skills without having that crutch of the beer in your hand or you being a couple beers in, and then the pandemic happening. So then we're working from home and this is our socialization or just on phone calls and stuff. I would love to hear what you guys think, because for me, I don't want to socialize quite as much anymore. And that's just because I didn't really want to socialize before anyway. It's just I went because I knew there was going to be alcohol, right? And now the true me that's not hyped up on some kind of substance, I tend to do less socialization. I need more private time because that's who I actually am. So I wonder are you rusty, or are you just more introverted than you thought you were because you're no longer party Matt hyped up on, a 12-pack of beer?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great point that you brought up, Lauren. Just for sure. I actually saw a social media post a couple of days ago that captured exactly that. There was this guy that was like, you know what? I was wondering like why I was having all this anxiety about going out all the time. And then I started realizing these are events that I wouldn't normally go to. And I was always going to them because I was drunk or on drugs or both. And he's like, and then I realized like, I don't need to go to these certain things too. So absolutely. That's an important point that you brought up. And for sure, I think there's a bit of that. Like I fancy myself like an introvert, but I'm very able and capable to be an extrovert as well, if that makes sense. And yeah, that was enhanced or highlighted by the pandemic as well. So I think a little bit of both, actually. It's a really, really great point that you brought up though, for sure. How about for yourself, Chris?
Yeah, I think, socializing is a lot of fun when I'm in the mood for it, but it's not something that I need to do. And I think a lot of what Lauren is saying is true for me too. Like, I was just doing it because that's what I had always done. And, it's what everybody else is doing. But now that I've stepped back from it, I go, yeah, you know what? I'm okay just hanging out at home and chilling and relaxing and being quiet and not having a loud bar. Like I hate being in a loud bar and you can't hear somebody and you're yelling. And I just think back to like all the times that I spent in a situation like that and all the conversations, how meaningless a lot of them were. I mean, it was cool, with the people that you're with, but a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is kind of the same thing over and over again. And I look back on that now and I go, man, what could I have been doing with that time? So, you know, what did I hear the other day? Somebody say, instead of FOMO, it was FONG, fear of not growing. And I think that that's such I wish I could take credit for that because it's so good. But I heard somebody else say it. I don't know who it was. But I think that's so true, right? It's like if we shift it from, oh my God, I'm fearful that I'm going to miss out on all these things to, well, yeah, but if I don't make a decision to get alcohol in my life, then what else am I missing out on that? I'm not growing. I'm staying stagnant. And these kinds of things just got me more and more depressed the longer I did it. So, it's a matter of when you are alcohol free, you get to decide like what your life looks like. So if you want to go out and socialize, absolutely, you can do it. I mean, get yourself a soda water, get yourself something to drink so you have it in your hand. It's really not that big of a deal. Like Lauren was talking about, like we make it into this thing. We build it up so much more than it actually is. Think about how good you're going to feel when you go to an event. You are socializing. You can still hang out with people. You can go home at any time you want. You don't have to worry about the cops pulling you over. You feel how think about how good you're going to feel the next morning when you wake up. Focus on those things as opposed to the negatives of, oh, it's not the same. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. It's going to be awkward. Because again, if that's what you're focusing on, that's what you're going to bring into the situation. So if you are one of these people who is like, I really want to socialize, I really want to hang out with people, but how am I going to do that without drinking? That is the thing I would say the most is like focus on those positives of what you're going to get out of this. Because we always talk about the fact that when we help people quit drinking, we do it in a different way, so that you actually don't have the desire to want to drink, because that makes a big difference, right? Because if you still think alcohol is benefiting you and you still wish you could have it, but you're forcing yourself not to, and now you're put into an environment where your friends are drinking or there's people around you and somebody puts a drink in your hand, well, that's way different than you being empowered to go, you know what? I don't want this in my life anymore. I'm making the choice to not be a drinker. So I'm going to go to this event. I know there's going to be people around me. I don't want to drink it. I could if I wanted to, but I genuinely don't want it. And I'm going to enjoy myself. It's all in how you look at the situation. So if you can really flip the script on that, I think that'll make a huge difference.
Yeah. I think too, and if you're in a place where life is starting to suck a little bit too much because of your alcohol and you're like, okay, I need to do something, just try it once. Even if you haven't quit drinking yet, if you don't have any like plans in the near future to quit drinking, go do something that you usually use alcohol to get through and just get through it. So the example I like to give a lot is when we were younger, 8, 10, 12 years old, going to these birthday parties for somebody that you only knew like the one person. You found a way to get over that hump without inebriating yourself.
Yeah.
And so for the first 15 minutes, everybody's like a fly on the wall. Everybody's separate. Even at these like dances, like the 7th grade dances and stuff, everybody's like, nope, they're hanging out with their girlfriends. Y'all are hanging out with your boys. And eventually they kind of come into the middle and they start playing at a birthday party or dancing at the middle school. You didn't need alcohol to do it back then. You don't need it now. But if you can just go out and do it once to prove it to yourself, there you go. And you can actually, in that experiment, by doing it just that one time and looking around, you're going to start to notice that it's really not that good of a time. Looking from the sober eyeballs that you'll have in your head that night, watching the people around you get drunk and start acting really stupid and dumbed down versions of themselves, you'll start to see it from the other perspective. But yeah, that's what I got on that.
Yeah, I love that. It ends up being sort of like your moon landing moment. There's so many of those for me, like my first concert that I went to. And afterwards I felt so much better. I'm like, wow, I remember the whole, you know what I mean? By the end of the encores or whatever, I'd be basically not remembering what songs were being played. I was present for the whole time. I enjoyed it. I felt energized after instead of like wanting to go home and crash. And after that, I started kind of craving more of that. So, and, you know, getting back to what Chris was just mentioning, and you'd mentioned as well, Lauren, like this, like the stories that we tell ourselves, and it's all about like what you're focusing on, you're going to get more of, right? That's just the way that life works. So if you're focused on, you know, what you don't have, you're just going to get more of that. And that's what your emotions are going to reflect that. So that's when you start getting the dry drunk, the bitterness, the resentment towards others that are normal drinkers, right? And that sort of thing. Whereas if you are focusing on these like new experiences, the new take on, you know, an old experience, like you mentioned, Lauren, going out for the first time and with the sober eyeballs, love that. You're just going to be more attractive to, you're going to attract more of that type of experience. And you're going to have just a way different approach towards like your relationship with alcohol. If you look at it like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, ask anybody who has quit drinking,
Ask a happy person who has quit drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't ask
Yeah.
a dry drunk who's gonna punch you in the
Yes.
face for talking about beer.
Yeah, well, exactly. But
Right.
I mean, yeah, ask somebody who has quit drinking, or just watch them and see their life. Like, they're not missing out on anything. I mean, I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I feel like I got my life back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I've gotten to get reacquainted with the real version of me that I had lost while I was, you know, pissing my life away with alcohol. And so again, it just comes back to get out of the fear mindset that is like, I'm afraid everything's going to be different. Well, I mean, it is going to be different, and that's okay. Embrace it and get excited about where you could be, and start redefining what fun looks like in your life. It doesn't have to be what it's been for so long. It can be anything you want. You could go discover something brand new about yourself. You could rediscover something that you used to really love. And that's what's really, really exciting about this. So I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up there. Is there anything else you guys would add to this?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to say, you know, you mentioned boredom right out the gate, Matt, about being bored when you went camping, because you'd usually be like multiple beers in, and then you get the tent set up and you were kind of bored sitting around. Chris, why don't you talk about like what happens with that boredom? Like, why are we bored in the beginning and how that goes away, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, the boredom, I guess I'm not sure how exactly to answer that, but you know, being bored is really kind of a low vibrational thing, right? If we're bored, it means that we're not being stimulated. There's something missing, right? And so it's not actually that we're bored. It's that we're so used to, you know, getting that rush of dopamine with the alcohol that, you know, everything that isn't hitting and flooding us with that level of dopamine that we were getting while we were drinking, yeah, it's going to seem boring. It's going to seem dull because, you know, while we're drinking, the more we drink, we get to this point where it's like our baseline is up here, right? And we only feel happy, we only feel good, we only feel excited and stimulated when we have alcohol in our system. And so when we take that away, naturally those dopamine levels are like down here, and our bodies go, oh, wow, this sucks, man. I want to get back up here, and nothing seems to do it. But with time, the levels will drop back down to a baseline so that normal activities like camping, like being with people, like seeing a baby smile, or, you know, just little things in life will again be enjoyable for you. But yeah, when we're so used to like flooding our brains with this unnatural amount of dopamine that we get from booze, there is going to be some feelings of boredness out of the gate. And the thing to help with that is just being aware that that's going to happen, right? Expect it. And so then I think, is that what you were talking about, Lauren, with that?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on the head. That's what I was trying to get across. And then also, just to add on to that a tiny bit, the boredness goes away because we replace it. So look, I was coming home every day at 5 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock I was in the wine, and I was drinking until the kids went to bed, and then I would go to bed whenever the wine was gone. So that's what I did with my day. That's how I filled my hours. No matter what else was going on, I was filling my hours with wine. Priority, top notch. So yes, to the dopamine, and the unnatural amount of dopamine that you get from the alcohol is going to make everything else pale in comparison. But we also have to replace what the hell are we going to do with the night now that we're not drinking? So then that's where this reinvention comes about, and we get to go decide to do new things. Like I eventually started taking guitar lessons because I can, and because I need something to do. I got into yoga. So you will replace it, and you'll find other things to do. So now instead of coming home at 5 o'clock at night, I actually don't even work a 9 to 5 anymore, but I would come home. I did quit during that time. I would come home and play with the kids. And that's a much better use of my time. It's not boring. It's actually really fun. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we hit on that boredom piece, because that's going to be huge for a lot of people as they go into those first few weeks of like non-drinking.
Definitely. For me, it was if I can translate it now, looking back on it, it was calming. It was very calming. And, by the second time, like day 2, I had settled into that. It clicked with me, like being in nature is calming, and I started to enjoy it. And I was journaling and doing these other things. But yeah, that initial, wow, okay. It's the usual like excitement of getting there and like getting blasted, was turned way down. And I was like, I'm not used to this. So of course my initial reaction to it was like, oh, this is kind of boring. And then the translation that came from that is like, actually, this is very calming and enjoyable, right? So yeah, just I guess to bring that home on that side of things. 2 quick other things that you mentioned, Chris, about the fear of missing growth or something along those lines. I've also heard a JOMO, so like the joy of missing out. So like celebrating yourself and casting a vote for yourself and your own self-care. I love that one as well. And there was also you mentioned just the fear, like if you're the way that fear shows up in the body is the same as excitement, like the reaction, the energetic reaction. So it's really all about, again, the story that you're telling yourself. Is this, am I excited right now, or am I fearful right now? And if you can guide your brain onto that side and that changing that story, and no, I'm excited, this is an opportunity for me, as opposed to, an ordeal or a problem. The difference between an adventure and ordeal is your mindset, right? So I just that's how I wanted to end with my side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are living in fear, just because that's kind of the state that we end up being in most of the time. But one of the things that we help our clients with is stop living in fear, start living in purpose. Like, what do I want my life to look like? I can build it out any way that I want. I don't have to be afraid of all these things. And again, it all comes back to like the programming that we have deep rooted in there. And so, yeah, it's another thing that we help people with, right, is breaking up those programs that are subconsciously making us drink, even though we could say consciously, I don't want to drink, but we'll still do it anyway, because there's a program running in the freaking background that says I need to when this happens, or I go out, all these things. And we could talk about that on another episode. But I think this is a great discussion. And if you are listening to this and you're fearful about a life without alcohol, I can tell you this, that there's not a day that I wake up and wish that I wouldn't have quit drinking. Like, my life does not suck. It's not boring. It is more meaningful. Everything is more vibrant. And it may not happen right away. You're not going to quit and then all of a sudden, hey, everything's wonderful. No, it's going to take some time, but you will get there if you really want this. So yeah, just keep the focus on what could be and where you're going, and that will help you tremendously. So, all right, cool, guys. Well, that's a good wrap for our first podcast.
Where can they find us?
Yeah, where can they find us, Matt?
All right, let's go.
Yeah, we're on all the streaming sites for podcasts. Okay. So you'll be able to find us as Freedom from Alcohol. It's on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, many different locations. Our home location, our de facto website, is on Spreaker. So Spreaker.com, Freedom from Alcohol, with the hyphens between each word. And from there, you'll be able to see all the different platforms we're on. So whichever one that you listen to your podcasts on, you'll be able to find the link from that, the Spreaker.com, Freedom from Alcohol.
Yeah. And by the way, you can join our free Facebook group with the same name, Freedom from Alcohol. We're all in there. We post all sorts of content in there to really help you kind of on this journey. It's a wonderful support and community of people that have quit drinking or are thinking about quitting drinking. Like, the support that you get in there is amazing. I love the people that are in that group. So come join us over there. And yeah, we'll be back with another episode soon. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you.